Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Saturday Morning Mastermind. I'm here hosting for everyone this morning. Jason, Catherine, and Lori, and I'll let them jump out and introduce themselves, and then we'll get started. We're continuing on with our book, Midnight in the Library by Matt Haig. Once everybody introduces themselves, I'll let Catherine start reading for us.
The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Thank you so much, Dan. This is Jason from Tampa Bay, and hope everyone's had a great week and is going to enjoy a fantastic weekend.
Good morning, everybody. This is Catherine Clement, and I know this is a busy weekend. It's Father's Day weekend, so happy Father's Day to anybody that fathers out there. And I was very fortunate to be able to. My father's not going to be here tomorrow, but I've been spending some time with him this past week, so very happy about that. Now, we are starting on a section of, I forget which chapter we're actually in, but it's called Pub Owners Make Dream a Reality. So this is actually, Nora has chosen this life with Dan where they're going to do the pub that he always wanted to do. And the local newspaper had written an article, I think, and that was the title of the article, is Pub Owners Make Dream a Reality. So that's where we're starting. They had, according to the article, bought the pub cheaply and in a neglected state, and then remodeled it with a mix of modest inheritance, Dan's, and savings and bank loans. The article presented a success story, though it was 2 years old. She stepped outside, wondering whether a life could really be judged from just a few minutes after midnight on a Tuesday. Or maybe that was all you needed. The wind was picking up. Standing out on that quiet village street, the gusts pushed the board a little along the path, nearly toppling it over. Before she picked it up, she felt a buzz from a phone in her pocket. She hadn't realized it was in there. She pulled it out. A text message from Izzy. She noticed that her wallpaper was a photo of herself and Dan somewhere hot. She unlocked the phone using facial recognition and opened the message. It was a photo of a whale rising high out of the ocean, the white spray soaking the air like a burst of champagne. It was a wonderful photo, and just seeing it caused her to smile. Izzy was typing. Another message appeared. This was one of the pics I took yesterday from the boat. And another, humpback mother. Then another photo, 2 whales this time, their backs breaking the water, with calf. The last message also included emojis of whales and waves. Nora felt a warm glow, not just from the pictures, which were indisputably lovely, but from the contact with Izzy. When Nora backed out of her wedding to Dan, Izzy had insisted that she come to Australia with her. They'd mapped it all out, planned to live near Byron Bay and get jobs on one of the whale-watching boat cruises. They had shared lots of clips of humpback whales in anticipation of this new adventure. But then Nora had wobbled and backed out, just like she had backed out of a swimming career and a band and a wedding. But unlike those other things, there hadn't even been a reason. Yes, she had started working at string theory, and yes, she felt the need to tend to her parents' graves, but she knew that staying in Bedford was the worst option, and yet she picked it. Because of some strange predictive homesickness that festered alongside a depression that told her, ultimately, she didn't deserve to be happy, that she had hurt Dan, and that a life of drizzle and depression in her hometown was her punishment, and she hadn't the will or clarity, or hell, the energy to do anything. So in effect, she swapped her best friend for a cat. In her actual life, she had never fallen out with Izzy, nothing that dramatic. But after Izzy had gone to Australia, things had faded between them until their friendship became just a vapor trail of sporadic Facebook and Instagram likes and emoji-filled birthday messages. She looked back through the text conversations between her and Izzy and realized that even though there was still 10,000 miles between them, they had a much better relationship in this version of things. When she returned to the pub, carrying the sign this time, Dan was nowhere to be seen, so she locked the back door and waited a while in the pub hallway, working out where the stairs were, and unsure if she actually wanted to follow her tipsy, sort of husband up there. She found the stairs at the rear of the building through a door that said staff only. As she stepped on the beige raffia carpet heading towards the stairs, just after a framed poster of Things You Learn in the Dark, one of their favorite Ryan Bailey movies, which they had watched together at the Odeon in Bedford, she noted a smaller picture on a sweet little windowsill. It was their wedding photo, black and white, reportage style, walking out of a church into a shower of confetti. It was difficult to see their faces properly, but they were both laughing, and it was a shared laugh, and they seemed, as far as a photographer can tell you anything, to be in love. She remembered her mom talking about Dan. He's a good one. You're so lucky. Keep hold of him. She saw her brother Joe, too, shaven-headed and looking genuinely happy, champagne glass in hand, and his short-lived disastrous investment banker boyfriend, Louis, by his side. Izzy was there, and Ravi, too, looking more like an accountant than a drummer, standing next to a bespectacled woman she'd never seen before. While Dan was in the toilet, Nora located the bedroom. Although they evidently had money worries, the nervous appointment with the bank confirmed that the room was expensively furnished. Smart window blinds, a wide, comfortable-looking bed, the duvet crisp and clean and white. There were books either side of the bed. In her actual life, she hadn't had a book by her bed for at least 6 months. She hadn't read anything for 6 months. Maybe, in this life, she had a better concentration span. She picked up one of the books, Meditation for Beginners. Underneath it was a copy of a biography of her favorite philosopher, Henry David Thoreau. There were books on Dan's bedside table, too. The last book she remembered him reading had been a biography of Toulouse-Lautrec, Tiny Giant, but in this life he was reading a business book called Zero to Hero, Harnessing Success in Work, Play, and Life, and the latest edition of The Good Pub Guide. She felt different in her body, a little healthier, a little stronger, but tense. She patted her stomach and realized that in this life she worked out a bit more. Her hair felt different, too. She had a heavy fringe, and feeling it, she could tell her hair was longer at the back. Her mind felt a little woozy. She must have had at least a couple of glasses of wine. A moment later, she heard the toilet flush. Then she heard gargling. It seemed a bit noisier than necessary. "Are you all right?" Dan asked when he came into the bedroom. His voice, she realized, didn't sound like she remembered. It sounded emptier, a bit colder. Maybe it was tiredness. Maybe it was stress. Maybe it was beer. Maybe it was marriage. Maybe it was something else. It was hard to remember exactly what he had sounded like before, what he had been like precisely. But that was the nature of memory. At university, she had done an essay dryly titled The Principles of Hobbesian Memory and Imagination. Thomas Hobbes had viewed memory and imagination as pretty much the same thing, and since discovering that, she had never entirely trusted her memories. Outside the window, the street lamp's yellow glow illuminated the desolate village road. "Nora, you're acting strange. Why are you just standing in the middle of the room? Are you getting ready for bed, or are you doing some kind of standing meditation?" He laughed. He thought he was funny. He went over to the window and pulled the curtains. Then he took off his jeans and put them on the back of a chair. She stared at him and tried to feel the attraction she had once felt so deeply. It seemed to require a Herculean effort. She hadn't expected this. Everyone's lives could have ended up in an infinite number of ways. He collapsed heavily on the bed, a wail into the ocean. Picked up Zero to Hero, tried to focus, put it down. Picked up a laptop by the bed, shoved an earphone into his ear. Maybe he was going to listen to a podcast. I'm just thinking about something. She began to feel faint, as if she was only half there. She remembered Mrs. Elm talking about how disappointment in a life would bring her back to the library. It would feel, she realized, altogether too strange to climb into the same bed with a man she hadn't seen for 2 years. She noticed the time on the digital alarm clock, 12:23. Still, with the earphone in his ear, he looked at her again. Right. Listen, if you don't want to make babies tonight, you can just say, you know? What? I mean, I know we'll have to wait another month until you're ovulating again. We're trying for a baby? I want a baby? Nora, what's with you? Why are you strange today? She took off her shoes. I'm not. A memory came to her, related to the Jaws t-shirt, a tune, actually. Beautiful Sky. The day she had bought Dan the Jaws t-shirt had been the day she had played him a song she had written for the Labyrinths, Beautiful Sky. It was, she was convinced, the best song she had ever written. And more than that, it was a happy song to reflect her optimism at that point in her life. It was a song inspired by her new life with Dan, and he had listened to it with a shruggish indifference that had hurt at the time, and which she would have addressed if it hadn't been his birthday. Yeah, he'd said, it's okay. She wondered why that memory had stayed buried, only to rise up now, like a great white shark on his fading t-shirt. There were other things coming back to her now, too. His over-the-top reaction when she'd once told him about a customer, Ash, the surgeon and amateur guitar player who came into string theory for the occasional songbook, casually asking Nora if she wanted to go for a coffee sometime. Of course I said no. Stop shouting. Worse, though, was when an A&R man for a major label, or rather a boutique former indie label with Universal behind them, wanted to sign the Labyrinths. Dan had told her it was unlikely they'd survive as a couple. He'd also heard a horror story from one of his university friends who'd been in a band that signed to a label, and then the label ripped them off and they'd all become unemployed alcoholics or something. I could take you with me, she said. I'd get it in the contract. We could go everywhere together. Sorry, Nora, but that's your dream. It's not mine. Which hurt even more with hindsight, knowing how much before the wedding she tried to make his dream of a pub in the Oxfordshire countryside become her dream as well. Dan had always said his concern was for Nora. She'd been having panic attacks while she was in the band, especially when she got anywhere near a stage. But the concern had been at least a little manipulative now, she thought about it. I thought, he was saying now, that you were starting to trust me again. Trust you? Dan, why wouldn't I trust you? You know why. Of course I know why, she lied. I just want to hear you say it. Well, since the stuff with Aaron. She stared at him like he was a Rorschach ink blot in which she saw no clear image. Aaron, the one I was speaking to tonight? Am I going to be beaten up forever about one stupid drunken moment? On the street outside, the wind was picking up, howling through trees as if attempting a language. This was the life she had been in mourning for? This was the life she had beaten herself up for, not living? This was the timeline she thought she had regretted not existing in. One stupid mistake, she echoed. Okay, 2. It was multiplying. 2? I was in a state, the pressure of this place, and I was very drunk. You had sex with someone else, and it doesn't seem you have been seeking much atonement. Seriously, why drag all this up? We've been through this. Remember what the counselor said about focusing on where we want to go rather than where we've been? Do you ever think that maybe we just aren't right for each other? What? I love you, Dan, and you can be a very kind person, and you were great with my mom. And we used to, I mean, we have great conversations, but do you ever feel that we passed where we were meant to be, that we changed? She sat down on the edge of the bed, the furthest corner away from him. Do you ever feel lucky to have me? Do you realize how close I was to leaving you 2 days before the wedding? Do you know how messed up you would have been if I hadn't turned up at the wedding? Wow. Really? You have yourself in quite high esteem there, Nora. Shouldn't I? I mean, shouldn't everyone? What's wrong with self-esteem? And besides, it's true. There's another universe where you send me WhatsApp messages about how messed up you are without me, how you turn to alcohol, although it seems like you turn to alcohol with me too. You send me texts saying you miss my voice. He made a dismissive noise somewhere between a laugh and a grunt. Well, right now I am most definitely not missing your voice. She couldn't get beyond her shoes. She found it hard, maybe impossible, to take off another item of clothing in front of him. And stop going on about my drinking. If you are using drink as an excuse for screwing someone else, I can go on about your drinking. I'm a country landlord, scoffed Dan. It's what country landlords do. Be jovial and merry and willing to partake in the many and manifold beverages we sell. Geez, since when did he speak like this? Did he always speak like this? Bloody hell, Dan. He didn't even seem bothered, to seem grateful in any way for the universe he was in, the universe she had felt so guilty for not allowing to happen. He reached for his phone, still with his laptop on the duvet. Nora watched him as he scrolled. Is this what you imagined? Is the dream working out? Nora, let's not do this heavy shit. Just get to bloody bed. Are you happy, Dan? No one's happy, Nora. Some people are. You used to be. You used to light up when you talked about this. You know, the pub, before you had it. This is the life you dreamed of. You wanted me and you wanted this, and yet you've been unfaithful and you drink like a fish. And I think you only appreciate me when you don't have me, which is not a great trait to have. What about my dreams? He was hardly listening or trying to look like he wasn't. Big fires in California, he said, almost to himself. Well, at least we're not there. He put the phone down, folded his laptop. You coming to bed or what? She had shrunk for him, but he still hadn't found the space he needed. No more. Ikasagon, she told him. What? The quiz earlier, the 20-sided polygon. Well, a 20-sided polygon is called an icosagon. I knew the answer, but didn't tell you because I didn't want you to mock me. And now I don't really care because I don't think me knowing some things that you don't should bother you. And also, I am going to go to the bathroom. And she left Dan with his mouth open and trod gently on the wide floorboards out of the room. She reached the bathroom, switched a light on. There were tingles in her arms and legs and torso, like electric static in search of a station. She was fading out, she was sure. There wasn't long left here. The disappointment was complete. It was an impressive bathroom. There was a mirror. She gasped at her reflection. She looked healthier, but also older. Her hair made her look like a stranger. This was not the life she imagined it to be. And Nora wished the self in the mirror good luck. And the moment after that, she was back, somewhere inside the midnight library, and Mrs. Elm was staring at her from a small distance away with a curious smile. Well, how did that go? We'll stop there.
Thank you, Catherine. As always, you did a great job. Go ahead, Jason.
Yeah, great reading. Great reading. Terrific. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I sort of get lost in the eloquence of your reading, especially with your describing every, so many things in the scenes. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, I think there's quite a bit here to unpack, because in listening and reading along and going through that, just thinking about some of the, like we talked before, about some of the regrets that we look at, and here in seeing that she had the opportunity to step into one of those lives and realize that it was in a lot of ways just as disappointing as what she expected it to, I think, kind of be. I think it played out how she was expecting it to play out, rather than maybe working towards the real possibility of making it what it could have been. And it could have been so much more. I think if she had let herself truly go, rather than continually look for the disappointment.
Yeah, well, I sort of got ahead a little bit different take on it. I think that she, unless you were saying like the way she thought it was going to be before she felt the regret about maybe not taking that path. And then once she felt that regret, then she stepped into that life path, and then realized it wasn't what she thought it would have been, worth regretting. But I think it also, there's that element of throwing yourself into something, and that conviction into something, to where, I don't know if you've ever experienced it, in that instead of having resistance when you're going to do something, when you throw yourself into it, you've pushed any resistance aside, and so that resistance doesn't get in the way. And sometimes it doesn't get in the way of your enjoyment, and sometimes allows you to experience more enjoyment and realize, and be grateful about things, with a different perspective as you're going through it. So it seemed to me that perhaps as she stepped into this life path, that she that was kind of void, because she hadn't stepped into it from the beginning, having gone full force into it, leaving any resistance behind. In fact, she was now stepping into it with all sorts of resistance and expectations, and also not having apparently the memories of the things that she enjoyed, of the beginning of the relationship. So that may be something to consider.
Well, you make some good points, but I think along with that, by still having a little bit of what she expected and had thought it would be like, and being in that moment and where she was at, I think one of the things we've learned from a lot of these books is when you're in those moments and you're there, you have the choice to apply the outcome of working towards what you would like it to be, to make that change, to help it go and get to where you would like it to be. And having known the regrets and what she felt about where she was before stepping into this, maybe that was hopefully or plausibly giving her the chance to say, okay, I know what my expectation was. Here I am. I now am in this. I have the chance to now move forward and build the expectation that I wanted. But then she got in, and some of the other things that were there, I think, overlaid, I think, a little bit of what she really thought it was going to be like. So I think she never really gave herself the chance to, by stepping into it, experience what she maybe could have.
Well, it did sort of drop her into that existence at a certain age, rather than starting her from the beginning of that, of where it split off. You know, where it didn't start her where she made the decision not to marry him, and then instead she decided to marry him, and then to go on to enjoy the marriage, you know, getting married and all everything beyond that. It's just dropped her in at the end, and so she had that feeling of getting in bed with a stranger because she didn't recognize him. So it was, I think that, you know, that it kind of made a point to me of how we sort of grow into relationships with people. We kind of grow into where we are. We would never have thought, most of us would never have thought that, you know, we would be where we are now. However, where we are now makes perfectly sense, having been through it the way we've gone through it. And we've, as she mentions, made, you know, we may feel like we have either shrunk or somehow changed to fit, you know, fit the life that we're living along the way.
Well, that too. And I think sometimes we get into our lives and we know that we can change the trajectory of our lives, but sometimes we don't, and we don't know how to necessarily get it started, not because we're afraid of how to get it started. We just don't know how to maybe branch off, because there are aspects of things of where we're at that we like. We just want to minutely change parts of it. But even if we change one little part of it, it's going to change everything too, because if you change, you know, the trajectory, you change the trajectory. But the other thing I that was, and I think I lost it, but I'm going to try, and is that maybe part of what in the beginning, maybe there were some telltale signs about Dan that were there, but she continued to overlook or cast aside because she at that time was so, in that moment, in the initial moment, in love with him and wanted to go there. And in this life, had she picked up on those initial things back then, she never would have married him, because she would have seen, oh, well, he has a tendency to get really drunk and he might sleep with somebody or do this or do that, rather than overlooking it and being so enamored because of how he made her feel, which I think we all do at times. We get into relationships with people and places and things, and we get so comfortable that we tend to gloss over or toss aside the things that we know are the signs that are warning us that maybe this is not what you should do.
Yeah, perhaps.
Definitely. Isn't it just human nature that the grass is always greener on the other side, you know? Like we always think that, or at least I shouldn't talk for other people. I always think that I want this, this has actually been a huge issue in my business life because I th- I've come across a business idea. It makes sense to me. I get excited about it. And then I'm kind of like Nora, I get into it and then I'm like, oh no, this is I find out that it's too time consuming or that it's too well, what I found was that I kept getting into companies and I'd really pour my heart and soul into them for 2 or 3 years and then they would go under like and it like I had no it was it was a huge build up with thinking that, oh, this is going to support me the rest of my life and I'm going to be able to build for my grandchildren and blah, blah, blah. And then like they would go under and I would lose all that work. So I got really tired of investing my time and energy into things that I didn't have control over, which, that puts all the responsibility on you there. It definitely changes the ball game. But I just like one of the reasons I don't mind reading for y'all, I practice. Like this is practice for me because I want to read books for ACX, and that I enjoy reading and I enjoy reading out loud. Actually, I used to read to my blind friend. And I think that I really want to do that now when I'm reading for hour after hour after hour and my throat is sore and I'm spending 20 hours to edit an audio because we live a mile from or not even a mile from the hospital and sirens came through while I was reading, you know, you get into things and it's like, oh, do I really want to do that? But I think that's why I do believe in reincarnation. And I think that's why we come back and do so many different lives because we're always curious of, if I had made a different decision, if I'd gone that way or this way, or how would that have turned out? And I guess it never gets boring. Well, sometimes I guess we get bored. I never get bored. Some people get bored really easily. I've never figured out how anybody could get bored since the internet came about because there's so much to explore on there. But yeah, I think that thank you, Dan, and Jason and everybody for the compliments. That I just saw that in the chat. Um, I appreciate that. I I find as I get older, I get much more. It's not like I'm sitting here. Some people actually have like a calendar that marks off like how many days they probably have left in this life or whatever. I can't really do that. That's like a little over the top for me, but it's not like I think about, oh, I don't have much time left, but I am naturally getting more protective of my time. And especially with COVID, um, I got a lot more protective over spending time with family and friends and the things that are really important to me as opposed to the things that I think are important to me. And you can get, or at least I can, I'm very suggestible. So I can very easily get pulled into predatory marketing. Um, and sometimes I don't think that people mean to be predatory. That's just kind of the way certain businesses are presented, and this is how you market them, and it doesn't feel predatory at the time. I know because I've done it myself to other people, but I don't know. I just with COVID and everything, I just got much more. I wanted to be. I felt the need to be much more authentic and had to take a really deep dive onto, you know, what do I really want to spend my energy on? That's another gift that illness or disease, or in my case, pain, that's a gift that those things give you if you accept it. Is that when you have limited energy, you have to get real about what you want to spend that on. You don't want to waste it frivolously. And so conversations, bickering and arguing, and like, I'm not, I'm not going to spend my time on that. And there's a peace that comes with that, there's a whole level of, like, I always felt like I had to push to do this and be that and do this and be that. And then you get to a point where you're just like, no, I really don't. Like, I really don't have to do all that. And I can choose to do that. It's like I have this invention that I thought of, gosh, 30 years ago now, maybe. I don't know. It's been a long time, right? And I thought of this invention. I started pursuing it, and then I let life get in the way and I didn't do it. And I thought recently, I should I should bring that to fruition. And I started looking into what it takes, and it would actually be easier now because, like, if I need a grant written, I can get it written through Chat GPT will write a grant for you. Like, it's much easier now. But it still would totally, if I do that, that's going to totally consume my time and energy. You know what I mean? So even though, so I don't know if I want to do that. Like, I'm very protective of my time anymore.
Yeah.
Go
Well,
ahead,
it's
Jason.
interesting. I'll just make one real quick point, Dan. It's interesting that when we look at some opportunities and we're like, we're upset that they don't last long enough, and then we look at other opportunities and we don't pursue them because we think they're going to take up too much time and last forever. It's interesting. Go ahead, Dan. You're muted.
I was going to say, you make a good point on that. I think sometimes we do let our thoughts and look at something and say, this will be, because I'm right there with Catherine. I've done that too. I've been involved with things and thought, oh, good, I can, and a couple things I was gaining traction and getting things. And then things happened and they went bye-bye, and that, just killed my traction and, other things. Other things have gotten in the way of, my desire to still be, to where I make money passively and where it generates and stuff is still there. But I'm kind of like Catherine. It's like, where do I want to put my energy and how do I want to spend it? Plus, going back to a lot of the books that we've read and it's up to us to make the choice of where and how and what we do with our time and our energy. And I'm agreeing with Catherine. As I've gotten older, I've become more protective of, how I want to spend my time, what I want to do, what I want to, where I want to put it. And I've been finding I've been really, resenting one area, but I went into it with the idea that I would see it through till that got to the point where I figure, okay, now I can, but it seems like it's just going to, in some ways, it feels like it's never going to end. And I feel it's draining my energy in other areas to where, for things I do want to focus on. And a lot of times I get home and it's not Ubering, it's something else. The Ubering is not even remotely that. It's, just dealing with some people in some areas and things like that. And then when I get home, in my head, like after I, I'm getting ready to end up my day, and then I'll think, okay, I'll go home, I'll do this, and then something will come up, and then I have to change that, go take care of that. And then when I get home, it's like I wasted my energy to take care of that. Now I don't have the energy to come home, and I just want to come home. And when I get home, I just want to rest and relax and not be bothered by anybody. not that I don't want to be around people or that I don't enjoy being around people, but sometimes after, being out and busy and working all day and then taking care of issues and things that come up, I really get more and more protective of my time. And I've had one friend say, "Oh, well, you're just antisocial." No, I'm not antisocial. There are just times I don't want to effing be around people. I just want to go home and just be able to do my thing and do as I want to and how I want to. And so in that end, I fully get it, Catherine. And yeah, and one of you guys made the point that none of us thought we'd be where we're at right now, and yeah, I never thought I'd be, you know, um, some aspects of where I am. Yeah, I did believe I would be here, but it had a different picture along with it. So even that's something that I I'm going to put it this way, something I contend with because there are aspects of it that I wanted and I like, but there's so many aspects that I don't like. So
Yeah, it's sort of it just makes me think that it makes it a little bit more difficult to accept a reality when you don't understand the full story behind it. And maybe that's why so many times we feel like we need to explain our what's going on, or why we explain ourselves in any situation anyway. I felt it also interesting that she was contemplating how in the beginning of the scene that how she had felt undeserving, and then later on towards the end of the scene when she was discontent with how things seemed to have turned out, she felt like she was deserved more, and that also kind of had this misplaced feeling of being what was the word he was using? It's a common word, but in regards to feeling, having a high sense of feeling for oneself, that she felt like she was even more, deserved more than what she had at that point. So it was interesting the contrast there, and then again, I think that a big part of that is not having didn't have the knowledge of the story that brought everything up to that point. So I think it might just be an indication that how important the journey is to the and how relevant it is to the destination, and the destination being really any point of time that you choose to be thinking about.
People are so fickle, I am anyway. Like I could have my mind set on like one thing and be working my butt off to get there, and then get there and change my mind completely. So not that I intend to do that, but it's just the way that happens sometimes. And I think it's pretty common. especially when you're, like you said, she didn't get the whole backstory really that goes with this. The other thing I wanted to bring up, which is, of course, we bring up pretty much in every one of these masterminds that we do, is, our choices. Any situation, any life, you can look back and you can see, you can focus on all the bad stuff that happened, or you can look back and focus on all the magical stuff that happened. Because I believe everybody has, both in their life. I certainly have had very magical life, even though there's been a lot of roadblocks and bad things that have happened along the way. This has been an excellent life for me. Like if I had to rank it in, if I was Nora at the Midnight Library and I was ranking those lives, this would be one of the better ones, because I'm extremely blessed in this life. And I think that our focus is the key, because yeah, I could just focus on all the bad stuff and be completely miserable all the time and have checked out a long time ago. And, not that that thought hasn't come up, because we all know it has, but it's there are people that are, in institutions, depressed and completely out of control of their lives and things. We have a member of this group actually that is not in control of things at the moment, and it's very scary for her. And so, staying, and I'm not saying that she's there because she didn't stay focused on like, don't make that connection. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that our focus and where we allow our minds to take us, for most people is a choice. For some people, it's not a choice, whether it's just because of their mind or because of medications or whatever. For most people, we can really choose what to focus on. And even when it comes to something as simple as eating, we need to stop comparing things all the time. Like if you're eating something and it tastes good, then that's amazing and wonderful and spectacular. You don't have to sit there and taste it and go, well, yeah, it's good, but it's not as good as that what grandma used to fix 50 years ago, or it's not as good as that restaurant we had over there in Hawaii that one time, 25. You don't have to downplay the goodness of what is going on. You can actually accept and enjoy the goodness of what is going on without comparing it to any other thing, as if it was the very first time you had ever eaten it, and enjoy it that much. And I think if we made more choices like that, in really staying in the present moment and enjoying what is happening right now, instead of having our minds forward and backwards and constantly making comparisons, I think we'd be much happier as a species.
I like the point you just made up right now, because in a way, I think we do compare every little thing, even like now sitting in this moment, could be sitting here and comparing this to like, oh, well, last week's discussion was this, and now this week's is this, but this is not last week's discussion. Is that now and here and in this moment, or the fact that I woke up and I'm did this, made these choices, and did that. I think you're right. I think where we place our focus, whether it's good or bad, can be for every day, can be the beginning start of how we can work towards working towards being our happiest selves at that time. Because things are going to come along and things are going to happen during the day that are going to throw us off that. But again, it's up to us to decide, okay, well, this is a bad thing. Let me be in this moment now and go through it, but don't let me focus so much on it that it takes me away from moving back into the happiness that I need to move forward in life, and to be able to put, going back to a book we read, radiate that love and bring out that love and that ripple effect out there, because there is so much, and I think you guys would agree, there is so much negativity out there so much right now, that any little bit of good and positive and loving energy that we can show back to ourselves, back to our, to the world and the people around us, that will again help us in those choices that we make to continue to move forward. So that way we can move towards wherever we're headed, because I don't know the full future. I know how I'd like it to go, but there's still things not in my control. But when those times come, and when it comes more into focus, then how I respond and react and follow, what I believe, my beliefs, my thoughts, and stay true to that, then hopefully I can continue to feel blessed and be overall happy with my life and things in regards to my life, and not let the regrets overtake it and drag me down and keep me from experiencing and living life.
Yeah, it makes me think about the regrets, the connection between regrets and fears, and how much that folds into our happiness. And from what you said, and from what Catherine was saying before, in regards to our happiness or our goals or desires, and what we're pursuing in our life, and whether we're recognizing it to be what is going to make us happy or not, or it made me think what you're saying earlier, Catherine, about being in a group or with a company, or you have a job and you're the job goes under, or the business goes under, or whatever. There's that saying that there's a season for everything within your life, whether it's a relationship or a job or whatever. And the more we realize that we, like you said, our energies, we only have so much energy to expend, and time is precious and whatnot. But back to my point that, what our happiness, what we're placing our happiness on, it's kind of important that it's something that we can control, and in regards to this book, maybe the intentions going into the relationship and marrying Dan, getting married, where maybe her intentions were different. Maybe her understanding of what she believed would make her happy is actually different. I mean, I don't recall if she's actually pinpointed what it was that she decided would be what would make her happy, and if it was something that was within her control. But perhaps, for example, she was thinking, hey, I married this guy, he's a great guy, everybody thinks he's a great guy, and that takes care of portion of my life where I want to have a great person in my life to marry and build a family with. And then having that in my life, sure, there might be ups and downs, and there'll be great times, and then there might be some difficult times, but that would take care of a certain aspect of my life and allow me to then focus on other parts of my life that would bring in bring everything kind of together and make me happy in other ways. Maybe her idea of happiness was, with that life path, was multifaceted, whereas if you take a different path, our happiness, instead of encompassing multiple things, sort of gets narrowed down to just one thing. Well, as long as I can do this one thing, as long as I have my faith, or as long as I accomplish this, as long as I'm successful in some way, I don't know what job or business or whatever it might be, if it's whatever it might, whatever you choose, it might be just that one thing rather than multiple things. But regarding being able to be in control of whatever it is that can make you happy, I think that certainly is important, unless you have that idea that hey, that there is a season and a time, and part of life and living and having a happy life is about the journey of going through that and having multiple adventures and multiple careers and multiple relationships. Again, that goes back to the story and how we were brought up and what we grew to believe as we were growing up to be the thing that was important. Was it to get married one time and have a family and then have one career and that was the thing? Or was it to have meet as many people and do as many things and live as many places as possible? And so that whole story that that we kind of grow to believe is important really does color our perspective. And I'll stop there, but that's it. Yeah.
Well, there's so much to everything that we take in, that we deal with day by day, minute by minute, nanosecond by nanosecond, that we sometimes there's so much that we have to kind of, I think, sometimes pick and choose sometimes, where we got to place our focus and energies, and where
placing our happiness on on one person. If I'm with that person, I'll be happy. Or one job, or one, it's a lot of pressure.
Well, and that's, like you said, it goes back to part of how we were brought up. Things we saw, what was the norm for certain generations, because every generation goes through their little things that are what's considered the norms, or the things, or and as things progress and change and new discoveries come about and other things get either a little more validated, or new things come up and change the perspective on things, and that's a lot to add into our little world too, so we're dealing with all those too. And then our own thoughts and perceptions and things of how we see things and what we think and what, and how we project things out even sometimes. And, I think we all do that a lot. We tend to project more so, I think, to help make ourselves feel better and to maybe help with the decision making process rather than just in this moment and basing it on what's here and now. We tend to say, okay, well, if I make this decision, how will that play out here? And we project out. But half the time, that's not how it plays out, if we're honest. Half the time it goes,
Well, yeah, but think about how important it is not to have those assumptions about, oh, it's not going to play out the way I think it's going to, because then, I mean, that can throw you off your path. But like in this case with Nora getting married, for that particular life path, and then her mentioning that how she shrank back for, in order to kind of fit into Dan's life and what he wanted, but was willing to compromise or whatever you want to say that with him, because it was going to bring her a life that she felt would make her happy. But from her new perspective of not having taken that life, she's maybe a little bit more selfish and wanting other things to have make her happy.
But I think that's part of the rub. That's part of, because, I think we all do it, and we need to have those projections because, we need something to kind of work towards, and we look forward to, but it's, sometimes reality really does not pan out to what we think too. And, and so therefore, it's some ways the biggest guessing game ever because of, when you look at it, you're making it now and based on what you think, but you go back and 5 years down the road, you look back, well, maybe I should have taken that route or this route or, and, but, sometimes when you make those decisions, then you, like, if you get married or, involved in a long-term relationship or however it works, then you have that to play against and look at, and then how, and sometimes we do shrink back. I think we all have shrunk back in some cases, and other times we've pushed forward and been more forceful, for lack of a better way of putting it, where we want to be or what we want, including with the relationships around us. And other times we shrink back because we think by complimenting and making that compromise, it will get us to something better. So, it's
sure. If we shrink back knowing that we're going to be resentful about it, then that sort of kind of poisons the soup, so to speak. But in regards to, I mean, I think it's sometimes important to, when we're looking at our goals and the things that we might want to pursue, sometimes we don't, in regards to pursuing those goals, sometimes we don't know what will unfold before us as we go through the steps to reach that goal. So if we're assuming that something's going to take over our lives or be too time consuming or what have you, try it out and see, because we might think, like, if you're looking at taking on a project such as an invention or something, what if like what you mentioned, Catherine, in regards to your invention, maybe you say, well, let me go ahead and do it and get it going. And I can always pass it off to a manager at some point and have the manager run it, and then just take a small percentage, or sell the idea down the road and step away from it completely. It doesn't, sometimes it just takes a slightly different way of thinking about the outcome. And to give us more options. And so sometimes I guess that's why it helps to talk to people about your situation sometimes, to get different points of views. And again, that's why I like coming here, because you guys have such great points about these things.
Well, it's almost 8:30, so if anybody has any last thoughts or anything, I'll wrap it up if nobody has anything. So I'll give you guys a second if you want to say something.
Happy Father's Day. Have a great weekend. Love you guys.
So with that, thank you for joining us on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. You can find us at Mindset Mastery Collective on Facebook. That has ways of how you can join us here on the Zoom, with links and stuff and all that, if you want to join us and help discuss what we're going over. We'll continue on in the Midnight Library by Matt Haig next week, God willing. Hopefully, the universe thing will work out right and everybody will be here. Hopefully, Samantha will be back to join us. Hopefully, Lori will have her computer back and she can then join us and share her thoughts and views. You can also find us on YouTube at Mindset Mastery Collective and find all the video replays of everything we've done here. And you can go to our website, mindsetmasterycollective.com. Same information all there. We look forward to seeing you next week on the Saturday Morning Mastermind. With that, see you guys later. Love you all.